Hey everybody, so welcome back to the channel where we do all sorts of vibe coding, the right way, the wrong way, every which way in between. Today I want to talk to you guys about something I'm working on, and it would be something that is not typically recommended for vibe coders to work on, which is a highly complicated, challenging enterprise grade feature. So most people would recommend, if you want to do a data grid, either do tan stack table, or you can use a commercial option like AG grid and things like that. And so for me personally, I actually did start with tan stack table. And my whole thing is that I want to create something that's better for me than Clickup, right? Better for me than Notion, because I had a lot of issues with those apps and working in my business. So I feel like, hey, what's the promise of vibe coding if it's not to be able to create stuff yourself that works better than those commercial options? Of course, that's a very naive view, but since vibe coding is unlimited, and so I've been hacking away at it for about 8 months, to be honest. This particular data grid that I've got working now, I would say is probably about 4 or 5 months of work. And that has involved a lot of rewrites, a lot of reworking, a lot of different things. But what I've got going on here, it has a really good foundation now. And that's after a ton of refactoring. So basically, I'm going to go over kind of how I set it up, how it works technically, and how it's kind of different from something like tan stack table. And it actually is similar to AG grid. As you can see, you can do stuff like select. You can do sorting. What happened there? Of course, the demos are always kind of shady. You can hide and show columns. Okay, this one definitely will sort. You're killing me. Oh, I know why. The grouping and the sorting. There we go. Okay, so the sorting works. There we go. And the grouping is like what you see in ClickUp. And Monday, and this also, there we go, it also works. And all these changes, this is all being persisted to the back end. You can see it all has optimistic updates. Let's see if this works. I don't know. Let's see if the update works. Okay, that didn't work. Some of the updating works, some of it doesn't. But so we're getting there. But as you can see, it's very snappy, right? And it has virtual scrolling and all that, and yeah, it has some bits and pieces that I'm still working on, but what I was working on in the past few days is the persistence. So this grouping state should reload. Look at that, boom, the same exact state. And even if I close this, let's see if that works. If I close that group and refresh, boom, it stays saved like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I'm working on, and basically, my goal is to have something that is better and easier to use than the commercial options for myself, and maybe for as a product in the future. And I can talk more about kind of how this entire app I have planned will work. But this data grid is like very important. And there was a question, basically, if it's even going to be possible to to make something like this as a vibe coded thing. Let's see, column reorder. Okay, not quite working. Wait a second, let me clear the group. Let's see, column reorder. No, okay. So some things, are there and some things are not, but in general, stuff like the selecting and the display of all the data, very snappy. And so the reason, basically how it works is, let's see here. So it's a hybrid React DOM data grid, okay? So when you use something like tan stack table, the every single cell is a React component. So what happens is it really slows down when you get something big with this many cells, right? It slows down. It's very hard to do it without timeout violations. As you can see here, let's see if the scrolling, right? There's no violations, right? There's no performance drag. Stuff like that. This is very hard to do with a React table. They're good for small things that don't have a lot of cells and you don't need super high performance. And from what I understand is that this hybrid system is the way that AG Grid also works. So the React component basically passes in all the state and all the data that's needed, and then the actual rendering is directly manipulating the DOM, right? So it's almost like a little mini framework here. And the reason I got to this point was I basically had to ask Claude, like, how can we make this performant? And so this was a recommendation from Claude, and we ended up building it out, and it did work relatively well from the beginning, although the entire process has been massive amounts of refactoring. But so some of the features that we have working on here is the hybrid virtual scrolling. So you can render thousands of rows because we're only actually rendering what you see here and a little bit of extra, and it updates very quickly in the background with all the data. Let's see what else. Right, mixed row types. So we have different rows. We have data groups, headers. Oh, we can even do nested groups. Let me see this. Boom. Nested groups. You can't even do that in Clickup. What's up? Boom. Let's rearrange the net. Okay, the groups is serious fire action here. Okay, so we have different group settings. We have smart viewport management, only renders visible cells. A cell type system. This is what I'm working on, but we have these like dates and description and text, and we have these badges, which are not loading the options for some reason. And all these are coming from the back end, and customizable. Going to work on the cells. And we have multi-level grouping I just talked about. We have interactive selection and editing. So we have single click editing, which is a big one. And the way that the UX works is that if you click like on the edge of the cell, you can select it. And then if you clicked on the target here on the content, then you edit. So that lets you kind of get the convenience of the single click edit with these sort of more advanced spreadsheet systems. So we've got column management, stuff that you would expect. Let me see if that works. Remove this. So we have, let's see, hold on. Do we have multi-column? No, it's not working. The visuals work, but anyway, so there's various column sorting, and let's see, relationship management, performance memory optimization. So incremental DOM updates, we only modify changed elements using precise diffing, memory pool management, reusing DOM elements. So there's all this stuff that we do. Okay, so here's the rendering philosophy. Okay, it uses a 3-layer hybrid rendering architecture. So the first layer is the React layer. It handles the outer structure and reactive UI components. So this is like a React component here. These are React components. Like this is actually a React component. The editors, this is ShadCN. This is a React component where we can search. Everything else is rendered straight to the DOM. So it's like HTML, not React. Okay, so the DOM manipulation layer. This is the performance core. Direct DOM creation for high performance table rendering. So it's creating a row element directly and telling you where to write the HTML in the DOM. Okay, and then we have canvas overlay. So when you see these things, this is actually suddenly got funny. This is actually sorry. Yeah. So this is an overlay system that goes on top of the table. So the table itself doesn't get interacted with when you're doing all these interactions. Doesn't get, so you don't re-render the table at all when you're selecting stuff, which is a big problem with something like TanStack table. Okay, so why is it hybrid? So React handles the header components, the state management integration with legend state, reactive re-rendering of UI controls, type-safe component props, and event handling. The direct DOM handles the table body with thousands of cells, virtual scrolling and viewport management, high frequency interactions, right? Select, hover, drag, all these things are high frequency. And so performance critical animation. So all of that stays out of React. And the canvas overlays, they have the selection rectangles with pixel precision editing overlay. drag and drop visual feedback, complex interactive states. Okay, so that's the basics. Now for the state management, we use an observable pattern, and the observable is actually a type of pattern in JavaScript. And what legend state, which is the library that I'm using, does is that it makes it into a really fantastic primitive for interacting with data in your app. And so the main idea is that you create these stores, and then you can process the data in those stores how you need it, and then the rest of your app can observe that, observe those different properties and react to it. So you can see there's 3 layers of reactive architecture. We have the core table, core observable, which is like the basic data, the raw data that comes into the table, like all the cells, all the actual raw data. Then we have the interaction state, like if you're editing, what's focused, if you're selected, are you dragging? That's the table interaction observable, and that's what helps trigger these different states that you need, like selecting, editing, and the like. And then the last one is this visual state, which is a complete picture of what your cells and what your table should look like. And so basically what we do is that we have this reactive data pipeline, which is, we get an entity type, which is from our backend, what all of our entities look like. What our data looks like is an entity. And so it takes all that data and then it transforms it into process rows. And that all goes into the visual state with the inputs, applying sorting and doing everything it needs. And then the renderer is actually observing this state. It basically watches and it looks for changes, and when changes happen, it re-renders. So it only re-renders what it needs. So this is more difficult to achieve in a React component because of when you have cascading re-renders. In fact, you have those problems with this type of solution here. So we had to do a lot of debugging to make sure we don't get those cascading. But when you have the efficient DOM updates that don't cascade with these, only on these changes, then it's very highly performant. That's how you get those thousands of rows. Otherwise, it's really hard. The controllers, so we basically we have a modular system of different controllers, selection controller, keyboard controller, scroll controller, column width manager, group renderer. So these are different modular components that take different functionality and handle different functionality, because otherwise it gets super bloated. I mean, there's so much going on here that if you don't split it up, then it's pretty much impossible. And let's see, we have virtual rendering engine with mixed row types. So this is kind of how we create the data row. See, data group summary. We haven't fully set up a summary row yet, so that will be next. This is basically, Claude planning it out for me, stuff that I haven't even planned. Right, and we have a unified rendering pipeline, handles all row types, and the coordinate system. So this is taking me a lot of time to work on, which is basically how does the table know where each cell is? Because once you have virtual scrolling, it makes it tricky, because basically when I scroll down and let's say up here, this goes out of the viewport, right? So you can't use absolute viewports. You have to kind of use a calculation state. A way to calculate it. So we have like how much we've scrolled left, how much we've scrolled top, the total width, total height, visible column range. Like all these things have to be constantly updated. So it can be a major performance hog if you don't really keep an eye on it. And so the positioning goes to the visual state. And then this last thing that I've been working on, which is the persistence layer, which is nice. Visual inputs column width on change. Yeah, so basically we set up these custom on change events that saves all the different preferences and the visual state that we want to save, and that works well. What else do we have? Type safety. This is stuff that is basically necessary to make sure you don't load the wrong data. And key technical innovations to make myself feel so amazing. But obviously this is it's a collaborative effort between me and Claude. Like I totally directed it on the state management solutions. It was the one that came up with the idea for the hybrid rendering. So here, this is kind of what we already talked about, and so this is basically summing up everything I've already said, which is really cool. But anyway, so that's kind of the overview of my of this data grid here. I'm calling it Vibe Grid, and I hope that throughout what I'm going to basically be doing in the future is just building it out and making it even better, so that I can provide value for my own companies, for other companies, for users. So we'll see how that goes. But I think what I've shown here is like the limit, pushing the limits of what you can do with vibe coding, because everybody says you can't do enterprise, you can't do really complex stuff. I think I'm proving that you can. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and follow me on my vibe coding journey. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, great weekend. It's a Friday, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.